Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Chicago online worship. I'm the Reverend David Schwartz, co-minister here at First Unitarian, and it is a pleasure to join you today online. We are a Unitarian Universalist congregation. We're a community of children and youth and adults, a community of many beliefs and many traditions, united not by the specific list of doctrinal points we all agree on, but by the values that we share, by the mission that we share, to grow our spirits, to grow as people, and to help to heal the world. Whether you're joining us online for the very first time today, or whether you've worshiped hundreds of times with this community, you're welcome here. And whether you believe in God some of the time or all of the time or none of the time, you're welcome here. No matter how much money's in your pocket, no matter if you have a PhD or a GED or no degree, you're welcome here. We're a people of many backgrounds, traveling in this moment into the future together. We're a people of many races and beliefs. We're a people of many genders and sexual orientations, and on this journey, in this path, in this community, all of you is sacred. All of you is welcome. You belong here. I invite you to center yourself, to settle yourself, and as the prelude begins, to prepare your heart and your mind, and your spirit for worship.
The ceaseless flow of endless time, no one can check or stay. We're the past with no regret, nor future with dismay. The present slips into the past, and a dream like melts away. The breaking of tomorrow's dawn begins anew today. The past and future ever meet in the eternal now, to make each day a thing complete shall be our New Year vow.
The present slips into the past, and dreamlike melts away, says our hymn this morning. The ceaseless flow of endless time has taken on new meanings during our quarantine. Many people shared their sense that time is distorted, days strangely long, and yet months pass by almost inexplicably, except for last March, which we all know had about 134 days. Each week, we set aside Sunday mornings for worship as a marker in the ceaseless flow of time. Sunday by Sunday, we mark the weeks, the seasons, the feast days, the sorrowful days, the holy days, the grieving days, the joyful days. And the past and future ever meet in the eternal now. It is a now that shifts with every breath. And with every breath these days, we here in Chicago have inhaled the smoke of wildfires in the west, our sunny skies made hazy and strangely gray. The headlines read, "Masks are the most important powerful public health tool," later to be defied by the president. The feds will keep interest rates unchanged until at least 2023. Hurricane Sally floods hundreds of homes in Florida. Blazes scorch habitats for endangered species. Sedition charges for those who protest violence. Sedition charges for government scientists. Whose America is it? The Times asks. Where is our America? Where have we been? Where are we going? The past and future ever meet in the eternal now. And here we are, between all that was and all that is yet to be, setting aside time for sacred spaces in our homes and altars in our hearts. Let us light our chalice and meet one another in the eternal now. Come, let us worship.
Friends, will you join me in the words of our covenant, the commitment that we make to each other about what it is we're doing here, why we gather, who we're becoming, and who we are. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. I invite you to warmly greet those who have gathered today in the chat, remembering it's public. Say hello.
At this time, please gather those who are young at heart, and your furry friends for a time for all ages. Thank you. You may have noticed that each week I start our time for all ages in a really similar way. You may have also noticed that the way I start online is pretty similar to the way I started when we were meeting in person. You may have wondered why that is, since I don't have any youth who are joining me at the moment in a physical space. I do this because I have found that patterns and knowing what comes next can provide a great sense of comfort to youth, especially in times of change. Now, there have been many things that I have changed about classes that are presented online, but one thing that I have tried to keep the same from week to week is our opening for the elementary level lessons. Now, in order to walk through that opening, we have a couple of items that bring us into the space and bring us into the time together. And I have set those items together today in an altar, because these items all together do form an altar that help to give structure to that space and time. So let's go on a little altar tour together. So these are the items that are used in our opening for religious education classes. Here we have a chime, some stones for joys and concerns, and a chalice for our chalice lighting. Let's start with the chime. In class, we use the sound from the chime to remind us that our time together doing church things is a special time different from school, work, or times with friends playing. It reminds us to think about now instead of cartoons, toys, or other things. As we ring it, we invite youth to raise their hand to honor the moment of sound and then the silence after. I'd love it if you would try that with me now. All you have to do is raise your hand, and when you can no longer hear the sound, please lower your hand. Thank you. The next thing we do is go ahead and light our chalice candle together. And as we light our chalice, we say a youth version of some chalice lighting words. We light this chalice with an open mind, a loving heart, and with helping hands. Last, we take the time to do a check-in. We have this moment for youth to share joys and concern, and we use these stones to give those joys and concerns a physical place to sit and a physical place to be returned after we have shared the thought or feeling which we feel that the group most needs to hear from us in that moment. You might be wondering why we share our joys and concerns. Well, this is a part of ensuring that youth know that all of them is sacred and all of them is welcome. Our time in class is a time for helping to create a social space for youth in their church home. Thank you so much for continuing to share space in our church home with me through the Time for All Ages this morning, and to those families who have chosen to attend our class options. I hope to see you again soon, and may you find peace in your religious practice together with us and in your home lives. Thank you.
I invite you to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Breathe deep the breath of life and be here now. Our words for meditation today are in honor of the Jewish holiday Rosh Hashanah, a celebration of the new year that's being observed this very weekend. This poem is written by author Marge Piercy, entitled The Birthday of the World. On the birthday of the world, I begin to contemplate what I have done and left undone. But this year, not so much rebuilding of my perennially damaged psyche, shoring up eroding friendships, digging out stumps of old resentments that refuse to rot on their own. No, this year I want to call myself to task for what I have done and not done for peace. How much have I dared in opposition? How much have I put on the line for freedom, for mine and others? As these freedoms are pared, sliced, and diced, where have I spoken out? Who have I tried to move? In this holy season, I stand self-convicted of sloth, in a time when lies choke the mind and rhetoric bends reason to slithering, choking pythons. Here I stand before the gates opening, the fire dazzling my eyes, and I approach what judges me. I judge myself. Give me weapons of minute destruction. Let my words turn into sparks. On the birthday of the world, what have we in this community done and not done for peace? Our world so desperately needs peace in this moment. The planet as we know it is in turmoil, from the hurricanes in the south to the wildfires out west, bringing their smoky gray and cloudy skies here to Chicago. We pray for peace for our country. This week we learned of further injustices and violence to immigrants at the hands of the state. Coronavirus cases rise as students move away to college. N95 masks are still in short supply. With the presidential election on the horizon, Americans everywhere are asking, what can we do for peace? Let us pray not just for peace, but for the courage to dare in opposition when this moment in history demands it of us. In this community, we gather to care for and support each other, even though we are physically apart, even with our nation struggling. We gather here together in the love of this church community. We extend this love to these members and friends this week. To Barbara Brown and her family as they mourn the passing of her sister. To Mary Lee Greenlee and her family. To Cindy Pardo as she journeys down the long road of recovery following her intensive surgery. May they all feel the love and prayers of this community. I now invite you to enter into our chat box, those who you wish to feel the love, the strength, and the support of this church. For all those names, written and unwritten, those souls unknown or forgotten, we pray. Amen.
One way to nourish our spirits is by setting aside time. We set aside time on Sundays, 10 o'clock, right here on YouTube. Another way to nourish our spirits is by setting aside space. We do that with our church building, particularly our sanctuary. During the quarantine, we still set aside time on Sunday mornings. It could help us even more to set aside space inside our homes. In religious traditions around the world and throughout time, people have made altars and houses of worship, their homes, and natural places. The altars create a space for their practice and their observance. You might think of an altar as a structure or a table, a slab of stone for offerings to the gods of antiquity, or perhaps it brings up memories of communion in church. In a broader sense, altars are a dedicated space that connect you to your spirituality and values. The word altar comes from the Latin altare, meaning podium or stage, something that's lifted up, and adulare, meaning to adore, worship, or honor, something that's larger than ourselves, and maybe even larger than our understanding. You can find altars not just in houses of worship, but in homes, gardens, maybe even a yoga studio. In ancient cultures, altars were often created in high places like mountaintops. In the Western tradition, of which we come out of, the worship in high places was popular among the Hebrews prior to the construction of the temple. The Hebrew scriptures attribute Noah as the architect of the first altar. Over time and after the destruction of the Second Temple and throughout the diaspora, Jewish religious observance centered around the home. Ritual meals, like the Shabbat dinner, made the dining table into a type of altar. In Christian traditions, the Eucharist or communion is prepared and consecrated on the altar. Some traditions call it a communion table, which is a similar concept to the Shabbat table. It's a sacred place for a ritual meal. In a church, often the area around the altar is set apart, and it's usually elevated from the rest of the church. In our Unitarian Universalist tradition, we've grown forth from the Christian traditions of Unitarianism and Universalism. Fittingly, our altar comes from that heritage and is set apart and raised 3 steps. If you look closely at our altar, you can see the symbols of the 3 Abrahamic religions. Starting on the left, the star and crescent for Islam, 3 different styles of crosses for Christianity, and the Star of David for Judaism. Outside of houses of worship, you might find altars in natural spaces and cemeteries, and mausoleums, crypts, including our crypt here at First U. Altars can be found in people's homes too. Some people have personal altars, maybe in a bedroom or a closet, or a special place for their own private devotion or reflection. Right now, the world is in so much pain, and so many of us are carrying a heavy burden of loss, fear, concern, hope, and caring for loved ones. We need practices to feed our spirits and sustain us and bring us hope. The technology of the church, spiritual practices, are techniques that we can use to deepen our spirituality, especially when we can't worship in person or together. While we can't meet in person at the church, you can make a bit of church in your home by making your own altar. Making an altar is a spiritual practice that can be helpful for anyone of any beliefs, because the meaning you bring to creating an altar is completely up to you. You may already have places that might be somewhat like an altar already when you think about it. Perhaps there are special objects on your windowsill in the kitchen, maybe a fireplace mantle or a small garden spot, or some plants in the fire escape. To create an altar in your home, find a place where you're less likely to be disturbed. To make your own altar at home, first identify a space that can be separate from other activities. Here, I'll start with a table. Now, I particularly want to mark it as something special, so I'm going to use a bit of cloth. I picked this one because it is a fall color. It has orange and then some purple tree branch patterns throughout. It needn't be fancy. This is a piece of scrap fabric with raw edges. But it does set aside the space nicely. It's also evocative of altar cloths or tablecloths, which are other ways of separating space and marking it as special. A symbol of your faith or tradition is a wonderful thing to include on your altar. For us here at First Unitarian Church, the chalice of Unitarian Universalism is the symbol of our denomination and our faith. And so I'm choosing to place a chalice here. Now at home, you may not have a chalice specially built as such. You could use a candle in a goblet, or simply a votive holder, or a spare mason jar works as well. And so I'm going to turn this jar upside down and then place the candle on top to form an improvised chalice. Our chalice also works nicely, representing the elements of fire and air. The more natural elements we can bring into our altar, the more our senses will be engaged. Having more senses engaged is a wonderful thing for experience, but it also helps what we're trying to do, and part of that is rewire the brain. You may have heard the phrase that nerves that fire together wire together. That's part of what the spiritual technology of altar building is about, because as you bring your intentions, prayers, hopes, contemplation, or simply rest in being, then you will frame those memories and thoughts with these physical cues. Then as you pass them, you'll be reminded of those aspirations, memories, hopes. So we also have the light, the heat, and the smell of the candle wax as a form of engagement and an improvised chalice. Other symbols of faith from your own traditions you may wish to include. One I have here is a weeping Buddha. In Buddhist tradition, there are different manifestations and representations of the Buddha, and this is the Buddha who weeps for the sorrows of the world. And right now, this Buddha's image and meaning really speaks to me with the state of the world. So I'm going to put my weeping Buddha here. Another item that I really love that brings in sound for me is I have a singing bowl that I would use that reminds me of when I had a regular meditation practice. And I also use it when I'm leading small groups or worship. And my spiritual director uses one at the beginning and end of our session. So this is a way to bring in both sound as well as an element that reminds me of that work with that teacher and reminds me of periods of mindfulness. So even if it's not raining, it is an anchor for each of those experiences and people that reminds me of being a learner and a teacher. It's very helpful to have something natural. I love orchids, and so I'm going to place an orchid here on my altar, but it need not be anything fancy. You could go outside and get a few blades of grass or a fallen leaf. You don't have to spend any money to create an altar. The things that you have at home are probably already the things that have the most meaning to you. You may wish to include something that reminds you of a loved one, either presently or a loved one who has passed on. For me today, I'm going to put these pearls here on the altar. They remind me of my grandmother who passed away quite some time ago. She was actually a very simple woman who wore no makeup and no jewelry, but she did have a strand of pearls for church. And after she passed away, I got to inherit these. So these are as much for me a reminder of her as they are a piece of jewelry I might wear. And so this is a wonderful altar for starters. My improvised chalice, fire and air. We have metal and sound and reminders of meditation, teaching, and learning. The weeping Buddha, a symbol of faith and world traditions that acknowledges the sorrow and suffering inherent in the world. And something natural and beautiful that represents the earth and breathing the air. So on so many levels, I feel color and warmth and light and seasons changing and memories. And so as I would do my meditation or engage here, I start remembering them and associating with the things here. And as I walk by this table in my house in the everyday, day-to-day moments, these could serve as reminders, and they would get richer and richer with time. Once you make an altar, it doesn't have to stay the same forever. Just like our faith and our ideas, it can change. You may wish to change your altar with the passing of the seasons or to mark certain holidays. You might wish to have a memorial altar to honor a loved one who has died or a time that you miss, perhaps times before the pandemic. Then when you need to grieve or to remember, you can go to that spot. Another option is to create a portable altar. Here at First U, you might think of our rolling altar that we use for special services. There are long-standing traditions, though, about portable altars. In the Roman Catholic Church, when traveling, a priest would take a portable altar or an altar stone and place it on a regular table. Then that table would be considered consecrated to celebrate Mass. I love the idea because it means you can bring something with you that is imbued with your own spirituality wherever you might go. These physical objects can serve as anchors for your most cherished values, ideals, and people. Another option in the spiritual practice of altar building is a portable altar. Portable altars go way back, even if they seem kind of like a new idea. You may want to bring special objects to an outdoor space, maybe the Point or the Midway, on a nice day to get some inspiration and time away during the quarantine. Or maybe you don't have space in your home to have an altar out all the time. So you would set it up before your meditation practice or rest and then put it away so you have the space available for other things. Perhaps you're in a nursing facility or a rehab facility where you have a tray table and that you need to pack it up or unpack it for times where you might want to watch church on Sunday morning or watch a YouTube video or Zoom with church friends or other family members. So here is a portable altar in what looks like a lunchbox. So inside, again, these are the same kinds of elements. I have a piece of fabric that I'll spread out here on this table, changing the table from an everyday in table into my altar for the time being. And I have an electric candle. These are a great option, and this reminds me of our chalice of Unitarian Universalism, as well as represents the symbol of fire and light. This is a great choice if you have pets, if you have small children, or you're in a home or a facility where open flame is not allowed. A natural item, I have this abalone shell that I have had for many, many years that reminds me of just the beauty of nature and reminds me of the ocean and water. I'll set that here. I have a squirrel. Now this might strike you as kind of funny. In spiritual direction, back in the early 2000s, the squirrel became a symbol for me of abundance, watching them on Boston Common as they fattened up in the fall. So it's seasonal, but it was also part of my practice during that time, reminding me of that generous teacher and also the spirit of life's abundance and feeding its creatures and me, and that there could and might and would be enough. And so squirrel is here doing mostly duty as my reminder of that time, but also fall represents the season right now. And this is important to note that whatever object is significant to you is great to use. It doesn't have to be something meaningful to somebody else or a symbol of a particular tradition. If it has meaning and brings you joy and helps deepen your spiritual journey, it belongs on your altar. I have prayer beads that I would use sometimes in chanting and meditation. And I do love green as a symbol of life and growing things. And my birthstone is emerald in May. And so I like these as both an object that is beautiful to practice, these malas, but then also as a practical object if I want to count my breaths or have a chant or a prayer. The tactile sensation then helps me keep track so that I can become more involved in that meditative practice. And sometimes an altered state of consciousness that can induce the relaxation response as well. And then lastly, in my portable altar, I received in the mail this Tibetan prayer flags, and I love they're tiny and portable. And this reminds me that people around the world are sending up prayers for goodwill and peace. And as hard and dark of the times that we might be in, that we are all in it together. And so I'm going to put these right here for my portable altar. Here we go. So at the end of my meditation or practice time, I can pack this all up into my lunchbox and set it aside until next time, or take it wherever I might go. In addition to a portable altar, you could also have a pocket-sized altar. This might be useful if you have multiple members of your household or housemates who all want to have a separate kind of observance. This can be great for traveling when space is really limited, if you're on a pilgrimage or just some time away, be that across the Midway or across the world in non-pandemic times. This can also be a really fun kit for families to do with children. And so in an Altoids box, I've got this little tin. It is curiously strong mints, but it can hold a curiously amazing altar in a very tiny space. So first, I have my cloth, which is going to separate my space. I have a tea light as my reminder of our chalice and for air and fire. I have some glass beads, and these stones remind me of the joys and sorrows that our children in religious education in their Sunday school classes, they start each Sunday they can choose a joy and concern to share with their teachers and their classmates, and they put them in a bowl of water. And so these are here to remind me that the people and children in the church and the world all are carrying joys and concerns. And I also think they're beautiful the way they catch the light. In my pocket altar, I have a pin from the Unitarian Universalist Association, Siding with Love, for their activist campaigns. I'm going to set that here. It reminds me of my connection to Unitarian Universalism. I also have a sticker of Oregon with a heart in it that I got the last time I visited. I'm from Portland originally, and the wildfires are really, really heavy on my heart. So I'm going to put this here, a memorial to those people and creatures who have lost their lives, and plants, and a reminder of the place they hold in my heart and holding them in love. So then the tin, once you set everything up, can hold things for you. This, in a way that I could look at and see. There's also space in the little tin for people who can use open flame to keep a book of matches. And I can light my chalice like this. And there you have it, a little pocket-sized altar to keep you grounded wherever life's journeys may take you.
We need not seek a separate holy place, but we can make one right in an ordinary spot. We may not be able to be inside of church right now, but we can have the church inside of us and inside our homes. First, we make our altars, and then our altars can make and remake us. May it be so, and amen.
Let us end our worship time together and go forth into our week and world ahead, charged and blessed with these words by Boris Novak, translated by Mia Din Tinjana. Between two worlds, choose the quieter one. Between word and silence, choose listening. Between two books, choose the dustier one. Between the earth and the sky, choose a bird. Between two animals, choose the one who needs you more. Between two children, choose them both. Between the lesser and the bigger evil, choose neither. Between hope and despair, choose hope. It will be harder to bear. Go forth in love and peace. Our worship has ended. Our service begun. Amen.
Friends, in these days of social distancing and online worship, just like when we met in person, the service happens as the work of many hands. It happens because so many people come together to make it possible. Worship leaders and musicians, the administrators, the committee leaders, our board leaders, everyone working together. The ministry of this church is not your ministers. We're just a part of it. The ministry of this church is everyone doing what they can for and with everyone else. And I end the service with a word of deep gratitude and appreciation for all those hands who make this possible. This community is entirely self-sustaining and self-funded through the donations from members and friends. Will you consider making a donation today to support the work of this church and keep making these services and our community possible? Thank you.